Hello, my name is Nicholas Hill, and welcome to the Instant Review podcast, where we discuss weekly NFL news, injury reports, fantasy football, upcoming game predictions, sports betting lines, and much, much more. We'll be hearing from our analysts on the latest from around the National Football League. Week 6 is almost in the book as we record before the huge Buffalo Bills and Tennessee Titans Monday Night Football game in Nashville tonight. We are nearing the halfway point of the season, and some teams are prepping to go on a playoff push to pursue their dreams of winning a Lombardi trophy. However, they're thinking about who they're going to draft in the 2022 NFL Draft, as some of their fans might want some changes in leadership. To share what's going on in Week 6 around the league, we have our NFL news analyst Leon Terrion to tell us some of his key points. Leon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nick, for having me back. Week 6 of NFL action was filled with big plays all around the league. First off, Jacksonville Jaguars rookie quarterback and number 1 overall pick, Trevor Lawrence, got his first career win, not at home, but in London against the Miami Dolphins. He led Jacksonville to a game-winning drive while finishing with over 300 yards passing. Next, the Los Angeles Rams obliterated my New York Giants, 38-11, 28 points scored in just the second quarter. Matthew Stafford continues to pass all over teams in his new home. 4 passing touchdowns for Stafford, with Cooper Kupp catching 2 of those scores for 130 yards. In the Ravens versus Chargers matchup, Baltimore's defense shut down Justin Herbert and kept the offense to only 6 points. While Lamar Jackson didn't have a standout stat line, running backs Le'Veon Bell, Devontae Freeman, and Latavius Murray each found the end zone on the ground. Dak Prescott and Mac Jones traded blows in the Cowboys versus Patriots game. Ultimately decided in overtime by a CeeDee Lamb touchdown, this was a close one. Trayvon Diggs found interception number 7 in 6 games this season. If he can find 7 more picks, then he can tie Night Train Lane's single-season record of 14. The Cowboys are now 5-1 with 5 straight wins and look to be Super Bowl contenders representing the NFC. Sam Darnold came back down to earth in the Vikings versus Panthers matchup. Even though he made a fourth-quarter comeback to force overtime, he now has led Carolina to 3 straight losses. In an AFC South battle between the Indianapolis Colts and Houston Texans, Jonathan Taylor ran for 145 yards and 2 touchdowns on only 14 carries. He continues to find success as the new face of the Colts. The Kansas City Chiefs are now 3-3 with a dominating win over the Washington football team. Patrick Mahomes with almost 400 yards passing, but he now has 15 interceptions in his last 15 starts per a Bleacher Report gridiron statistic. So the big question is, can he keep the turnovers down and find wins? The Las Vegas Raiders defeated the Denver Broncos, getting their 4th win of the season. A lot of resilience by this team, even with the issues with their former head coach, John Gruden. Raiders defense forced Teddy Bridgewater to throw 3 interceptions. Ben Roethlisberger and the Pittsburgh Steelers found an overtime win against the Seattle Seahawks. Even though Russell Wilson is injured, Geno Smith fought hard. TJ Watt with a strip sack to get Pittsburgh the ball into a Chris Boswell game-winning field goal. The Green Bay Packers found a win against the Chicago Bears. Aaron Rodgers continues to win in the NFC North. In his rushing touchdown, he yelled the words, "I own you" at Bears fans in Soldier Field. A lot of passion from the reigning MVP as Green Bay gets their 5th straight win. Finally, the Arizona Cardinals are now 6-0 and still the only undefeated team in the league. A commanding 37-14 victory over the tough Cleveland Browns. Kyler Murray with 4 passing touchdowns. My early season MVP pick has 20 total touchdowns in the season so far.
Yeah, so I want to ask first about that Rams-Giants game. And I know if you follow us on Instagram at Instant Review Podcast, you saw our producer Jacob taking a lot of video and photos from MetLife Stadium of what ended up being a very disastrous game for the New York Giants. They gave up 28 points in the second quarter to the Rams. They were down 28-3 at halftime. That's an extremely rare situation to happen on any level of football, especially at the NFL. Due to a performance like this, Leon, is Joe Judge on the hot seat? Is this an indefensible performance that could lead him on the way out by the end of the season?
I think it will. I know there are injuries that the offense is dealing with, but the Giants are 1-5 for the 2nd straight season, starting in those first 6 games. So I don't think it's really an excuses, and I think the offense needs to flow a lot better. I don't think Jason Garrett's really helping the offense either. So I think Judge will be gone by the end of the season.
Staying in the NFC East, Tony Romo, former quarterback for the Cowboys, now lead analyst for CBS, he said on multiple occasions through his broadcast of the Cowboys and Patriots yesterday that he thinks the Cowboys have what it takes to win the Super Bowl. I know you said, Leon, as well, you think they're a Super Bowl contender, but I want to impress on this further because there's a lot of great teams in the NFC. You have the Cardinals, the Rams, the Buccaneers, all that have good chances at potentially making a run at the Super Bowl. So, do you ultimately think that Romo is correct in that the Cowboys are a Super Bowl contender, or is he just being a homer?
I think he is correct. I know he wants to support his former team that he was the franchise quarterback for a long time, but Cowboys look different this year. Dak Prescott's back. Tyron Smith is healthy. Ezekiel Elliott looks like his old self. Trayvon Diggs coming out of nowhere with all those interceptions. Micah Parsons, the rookie linebacker. This is a team that's dangerous on offense and defense, and with the NFC getting more into the playoffs, I think they will get into the playoffs and lead the NFC East. But I would love to see how they would fare and maybe a rematch against the Buccaneers or whenever they face the Cardinals. Just really interesting to see how a lot of the intestinal fortitude from this team to go toe-to-toe against the Patriots and Bill Belichick and to come out with the W.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Leon, so much for giving us a rundown of some of the top NFL headlines after Week 6. And we'll talk to you here in a little bit at the end for your Player of the Week.
Thank you for having me.
Unfortunately, with the action comes numerous injuries, some with some big consequences, and like last week, it felt like yesterday was another just really bad week for injuries. With an injury report, here is Oscar Arango.
Thanks, Nate, for having me on. You're absolutely right. There were a lot of injuries this week, and a lot of them were pretty consequential. Starting off with the Browns, unfortunately, they continue their bad luck with injuries to Baker Mayfield, Kareem Hunt, and Odell Beckham. Baker Mayfield suffered an injury to his left shoulder. It seems to have something to do with a subluxation dislocation. He didn't miss any time during the game, so he may be subject to just how he tolerates the pain, and if he's able to go, it's his non-throwing arm. But if in the case that he's not able to go, Case Keenum will be covering it for him. Kareem Hunt suffered a calf injury. He might miss 1 week. We're waiting on Nick Chubb, hopefully, to return next week, but if not, Dimitri Felton might get more reps in his stead. Odell Beckham suffered an injury to his shoulder. I think this might just mean more reps for People Jones and Rashad Higgins. People Jones had a great game. He's doing great. He's filling in for the team and wide receivers and all their injuries, and he's doing great. For the Ravens, we got Latavius Murray, suffered an injury during the game, missed the second half. Filling in for him, both Le'Veon Bell and Devontae Freeman scored touchdowns, so they might get more reps next week. Tyson Williams might also be mixed in there, probably creating a running back committee. For the Giants, they've already had a lot of injuries to their wide receivers, but Kadarius Toney is now added down to that list with an ankle injury. They have a lot of injuries there. Sterling Shepard, who was able to play. Kenny Galladay might be able to come for the next game, so hopefully he do well. It's good, important to note Darius Slayton, their other wide receiver who's injured, is still out. For the Colts, we had 2 injuries to their wide receiver core, T.Y. Hilton, who suffered a quad injury after coming back from an injury, and Paris Hilton suffered a foot injury, and he was removed early from the game. For the Washington football team, Antonio Gibson, he's actually having a pretty good season this year. He suffers from a stress fracture in his shin. J.D. McKissick might be able to start filling in for him if he's not able to go next week. But with that, those are the injuries that we have for the week. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, so I first want to kind of ask you about that injury you didn't go over from last night's Sunday Night Football game. The Seattle Seahawks, their linebacker, Darrell Taylor, he actually went to the University of Tennessee. I watched him a ton while I was in school there. He had a really bad neck injury. He was paralyzed, and it was just terrifying because he had to be carted off the field. Fortunately, he was able to move his extremities, and the CT scans all came back, showing no nerve damage or anything like that. But still, obviously, it was a terrifying situation. And from your experience, Oscar, when you have an injury of that magnitude, what do you think are the long-term ramifications of an injury like that, where you are paralyzed, where you have to be carted off, and you have these concerns of paralyzations? We've talked a lot about CTE, and we've seen this a number of times where when a player's head gets caught in certain situations, it can have damaging effects for their health long term.
Oh, definitely. I mean, football is a dangerous sport. It's extremely violent. It's extremely explosive. These are men who've created monsters of their bodies to be able to perform the things that they're trying to perform. And nerves and your neck and your nervous system are all things that are very, very sensitive. And like you mentioned, any type of injury to the spinal cord can result in paralyzation of the extremities. There's also it's also important to note that there's very minor injuries that happen to the nerves. They're considered stingers. So a lot of times the nerve will just get pinched, and that creates extreme pain down the chain. Hopefully, Darrell Taylor, he comes back and it's not as serious as it may have seemed initially.
I want to switch back over to the Cleveland Browns because, I mean, Nick Chubb was already up, but now you have Baker Mayfield potentially has an injury. Kareem Hunt's going to be out for a few weeks. Odell Beckham is hurt again. I mean, they're unraveling with injuries. How do they find a way to keep their offensive production up for this upcoming playoff race and not throw away what many of their fans have believed is their best shot at making a run at a championship and basically, ever, at least in this current iteration of the Browns franchise?
Right. Well, it kind of starts with Baker Mayfield coming back. He is their quarterback. He is the key to their offense, especially with the injuries to their running backs. Peoples-Jones is the one bright spot in their whole lineup, really, that I've seen this season, and he's gonna have to step up. And these injuries are gonna have to figure it out. Odell Beckham is gonna have to figure it out. It's a season-ending injury, but it keeps recurring for him. Hamstring injuries, they're soft tissue injuries. They could take a while. That's what happened to Nick Chubb. So we'll see. If they could get the guys back, again, they have a really good team. They're supposed to have a very good defense. The chances are there, like you said. But health is usually the main factor in success.
With these injuries in mind, let's shift over to fantasy football with you, Oscar, and recap who had a monster Week 6.
This week was a time of... we had a lot of new guys on our top 5 performers, so let's get started on that. We got Kirk Cousins, Vikings quarterback, 373 yards, 3 touchdowns. Did great for them this week. Dak Prescott against the Patriots, 445 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. This game went into overtime. Jonathan Taylor, great player, unexpected performance, unexpected year. He had a great year last year, but nobody expected he was going to repeat it again. 145 yards and 2 touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver with the Cowboys, kind of getting that ping pong with Dak Prescott. 9 catches for 149 yards and 2 touchdowns. Matt Stafford still enjoying this resurgence, this honeymoon with the Rams. 251 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a pounding from the New York Giants. It hurt me. I know it hurt Jacob watching the game, but it was good to see. It was great to see somebody like that coming back and doing something good after such a long time of, mediocre success in the league. Top 3 surprise performances from my part. Darrell Williams coming in for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He scores 2 touchdowns. He runs for 62 yards. That's not impressive, but he's doing a great job. Khalil Herbert, rookie for the Bears, 97 yards and 1 touchdown. He was filling in for Damian Williams, who got hurt last week. And like I mentioned, Donovan Peoples-Jones, 4 catches, 101 yards, 2 touchdowns. He is the one bright spot. I'm sure you guys saw the highlight play where he catches that Hail Mary. It was just great. It was awesome. He's doing good.
So for the upcoming week of Week 7, who should fantasy owners look to the waiver wire to improve their football teams?
Right. Well, we know Kareem Hunt is hurt, so we're looking to D'Ernest Johnson or Demetric Felton to fill in for him next week. With the Chicago Bears, Darnell Mooney continues to surprise. We're hoping he has a bigger role next week. He caught 5 out of 8 targets for 45 yards and scored a touchdown. Rashad Bateman with Baltimore, with Sammy Watkins out, he's starting to take a bigger role. He did great in his NFL debut. He's a rookie. Let's remember that. He got 4 catches for 29 yards, but this is a run-first offense, so it's important to keep that in mind. It's a run-first offense. It's his rookie. It's his first game. He's already getting involved, so something to look forward to for the season. Kenyon Drake had an explosive game, 73 yards on 6 touches, so he's very efficient, something that we hope he can keep up for the rest of the season. And Ricky Seals-Jones coming in for Logan Thomas, makes 6 catches for 58 yards and scores a touchdown. Those are 4 guys that I think were great to be looking at.
Yeah, and the staff waiver wire pick of this week, Zach Ertz. He just got traded to the Arizona Cardinals from the Philadelphia Eagles. I think he's going to have a chance to step up in that offense. Of course, they lost Max Williams for the year 2 weeks ago, so now they've got his replacement in Zach Ertz, who's a Super Bowl champion a few years ago. He's been consistent with the top tight ends in the league. His production dipped a little bit over the past couple of years, but now I think being in a new scenery, I think if you need a tight end, you need some help on that position, go ahead and get him. Of course, we did a much bigger breakdown of this on our TikTok and Instagram accounts, so make sure to check us out at Instant Review Pod. That's our social media accounts for both of those pages for that and more NFL news breakdowns throughout the week. Now, do you want to make some money? Here to discuss the opening spreads for Week 7 matchups, here is Connor Kennedy.
Thank you, Nick, and let's get right into these Week 7 matchups. Now, the first one I'm going to talk about is the Dunford Broncos versus the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are favored by 4.5 points, and the over-under is 42.5. Now, the Broncos collapsed since their 3-0 start and lost their last 3 games playing playoff contenders, while the Browns are now 3-3 after a blowout loss playing the Cardinals at home, with the injury bug hitting their team hard as of late, with their 2 main running backs out alongside Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and Baker's not playing at 100%. So, with those factors in mind, I think this game could be closer than expected. However, I trust the Browns to win this one more, considering how anemic the Broncos' offense is against teams with any semblance of a pass rush, which the Browns definitely do have. Now, this next matchup is going to be the Houston Texans versus the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals are favored by 17.5 points, and the over-under is 47.5. Now, I think most of us can agree that the Cardinals are probably going to be 7-0 after this game, as the Texans remain without Tyrod Taylor and are looking like they'll pick in the top 5 come time for the NFL draft. Davis Mills has been playing a bit better since his stinker in Buffalo, with good performances in New England and Indianapolis. But despite this, I still believe this game won't be close, and I'll pick Arizona to win and cover. Now this next matchup, probably the closest matchup I'm going to talk about this week. It's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Tennessee Titans. The Chiefs are favored by 4.5 points, and the over-under is 55.5. Now, like I said earlier, this is a pretty close matchup in my opinion, with 2 explosive offenses and 2 terrible defenses. So honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if either team won this game. I could see this being a shootout, especially considering Kansas City's turnover problem as of late. I'm going to go with the risky pick here and choose the Tennessee Titans to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. I think Derrick Henry is going to run right through this Chiefs defense. And the last game I'm going to talk about is the Carolina Panthers versus the New York Giants. The Panthers are favored by 2.5 points, and the over-under is 44.5. Now, in the last couple weeks, we've seen Sam Darnold regress back to Jets Darnold since Carolina fell to 3-3 after a 3-0 start. Add in the fact that Christian McCaffrey is out for a while, and J.C. Horn is out with a broken foot, and it's looking like it'll be an uphill battle for the Panthers to clinch a wild card berth in the playoffs. Now, they are playing the Giants this week, who are a worse team than the Panthers, not going to lie, and they're also riddled with injuries. So I'm going to go with the Panthers winning a bounce-back game against the Giants and covering as well, especially if we see a return to form with Stephon Gilmore in his debut in a Panthers uniform. And those are my Week 7 matchups.
Yes, we have a very unusual 4 o'clock window on Sunday. We have 3 different games that have double-digit spreads. In addition to the Cardinals-Texans game you just talked about, with the Cardinals favored by 17.5, the Rams are favored by 15 points over the Lions, and the Buccaneers are favored by 13 over the Bears. So a lot of games expected to be blowouts on Sunday afternoon. But if bettors are feeling risky, if they want to bet on one of these underdogs in that 4 o'clock window, who should they bet on, if any of these teams out of Detroit, Houston, and Chicago deserve to be bet on as underdogs to at least cover the spread?
Yeah, this is a very interesting 4 o'clock window. 3 teams that are competing for the 1 seed in the NFC versus 3 teams that are basically competing for draft position at this point. We already talked about the Texans and Cardinals game, and the Lions might be the worst team in the NFL, so I think the Rams will win that one convincingly. I wouldn't bet on any of these underdogs if I'm being honest. But I think the Bears are the better team out of these 3 underdogs. I think with the speed-up Buccaneers secondary, if Justin Fields can throw for a touchdown or 2, I think that'll be good for morale and, boost his confidence. As we know, he's not all the way there yet in terms of being a quality NFL starter. But that could be a confidence booster for Justin Fields. And this Bears front 4 is still really good. Khalil Mack's one of the best defensive players in the league still. So it won't be a cakewalk for the Buccaneers offense. So yeah, if there was one game that bettors could pick the underdog for in this 4 o'clock window, I'd say the Bears is the safest pick if you can consider any of these safe.
As I want to circle back around to that Chiefs-Titans game, because you said it's going to be a shootout. I made a comment a couple weeks ago that maybe in every single Chiefs game you should consider hitting the over, especially in this game. It's over under 55.5, which for an NFL game is huge. Is that a lock?
I'd definitely say so, especially with how both defenses are. Like, the Chiefs are probably the worst defense in the league. If they're not, they're like pretty close. And the Titans aren't that far off either. So I'd say it'd be an easy pick for over. I think both these teams could easily score 30-plus points apiece.
Thank you, Connor, for your sports gambling segment.
All right, thank you, Nick.
So, now it's time to conclude this podcast with everyone's favorite segment of the week. It's time to find out who is everyone's player of the week. We're going to go in order that everyone appeared in, so we're going to go pick it back to the top with Leon. Leon, who are you picking for player? Actually, I know you have two, so your players of the week.
So on the offensive side of the ball, I'm going to go with Matthew Stafford and his performance against the New York Giants. Unfortunately, my team, 251 yards, 4 touchdowns. 2 of those went to Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp just looks like he's improving as a wide receiver one with Stafford. Van Jefferson's emerging, and even Tyler Higbee's getting better, more of a role in the receiving game. And on the opposite side of the ball, I had to give it to Xavier McKinney, second-year safety for the New York Giants out of Alabama. He picked off Stafford before the second half ended and picked off their backup John Walford. So if there's any bright spot in the defense this year, hopefully McKinney can even build on that performance.
Oscar, who are you picking for your player of the week?
I think my player of the week is Jonathan Taylor. He scores 2 touchdowns, 145 yards. He was a big factor in the beatdown of the Texans this weekend. Continues his dominance in the running back group. He's having an awesome year. I hope he keeps it up. My player of the week.
Connor, who is your player of the week?
So my player of the week is Dak Prescott. He threw for 445 yards and 3 touchdowns, completing over 70% of his passes with a passer rating of 108.7 in a 35-29 win over the New England Patriots. And so far this season, he's been looking like a definite lock for comeback player of the year.
Absolutely, man. He's been amazing to watch and come back. But my player of the week, if you watched Sunday Night Football last night, T.J. Watt, the Steelers' outside linebacker, worth every single penny of that massive $80 million+ contract that he got this offseason. Had 7 tackles, including 2 sacks. One of those, which was a strip sack of the Seahawks backup QB Geno Smith in overtime, and that basically won the Steelers the game. They were able to hit the field goal to win on Sunday Night Football. Wouldn't have been possible without DJ Watt. I mean, just that dude took over the game, was able to wreak havoc on the Seahawks and Geno Smith. So if the Steelers are going to make any run to the postseason, which I personally don't think they're going to make it there, but if they can, TJ Watt will be a major reason why that could potentially happen. But with that being said, that's a wrap. And thank you once again for watching the Instant Review podcast. We will see you next week when we recap all NFL-based news, injury reports, fantasy predictions, and much, much more after Week 7 of NFL action.
6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6